Are genetically modified foods bad for you? Coming up. This is Ernesto from AttaBoyCowBoy, and on this channel we give you health and wealth tips to help you be more successful. Now, one of the most common questions I get is, are genetically modified foods bad for you? And there's a lot of research and money spent on that every year around the world. It's a big topic. Anytime you buy a loaf of bread, there's some crackers or whatever in the market, a lot of them will say inside GMO free or non-GMO or GMO project. There's all sorts of different labels for it. It's something that's very controversial actually, because when you look at the science and you look at it from a basic scientific and physiological point of view, in my opinion, it really doesn't matter if the food is GMO or not. And I'm going to give you some really good examples. For example, myself, I would be considered GMO, which means genetically modified. It means that you've been changed from your original form. I've had vaccines throughout my life, and that basically changes me. In fact, in a lot of types of treatments that we're using in the hospital now for cancer and other types of diseases, we're using what they call gene therapy. That's to alter the genes in your body. And also for people that are being born, like newborns and stuff like that, they're using different types of gene therapy. In the future, they'll probably use gene therapy to alter humans. You can give them blue eyes, green eyes, or make them 6 foot or 5'5", or brown hair, black hair. That's all genetically modified. So now, my father's from a ranch, and I studied a lot of agriculture because I also have family from Iowa. They used to grow corn. It's been of interest to me, and it's really interesting that the Aztecs, for several thousand years, modified corn. And I'll show you some pictures here. Corn. It started off as a type of grass, and it was actually changed over time into what we know today as corn. Now, if it wasn't for the Aztecs, we would not have all these people living in the world, because corn is a very nutrient-dense food. It's one of the core foods that's eaten on the planet. Even if you think you're not eating corn, you're probably eating corn, because there's so many food additives and food chemicals made from it that are added to just about everything you eat that's processed. So if you ever eat anything that's, baked or from a can or whatever the case, you probably eat some chips or some ice cream, it's going to have corn products in it. The corn has allowed us to really grow our population. Now, back to GMO. There's literally been hundreds of studies on whether or not genetically modified foods are bad for you. And there's no conclusive evidence that show it's bad for you. So what they do is they'll get something. For example, corn. I'm going to use corn again. My family in Mexico, they grow corn, and it's non-GMO. It's organic, real corn. And basically that corn is about 4 feet tall, each stalk of corn, and it grows 1 to 2 ears of corn each. And they can only grow one growing season a year, which is about 6 months. Then of course the rest of the year is winter, so the next year they grow again. Now I go to Iowa, I visit my cousins, and they're showing me GMO corn. Actually, my cousin Roland, Howell, and Joyce, they showed me the cornfields. And the corn there is Monsanto GMO corn. That corn grows about 10 feet tall, so it's more than twice the height, and instead of 1 to 2 ears of corn, it grows about 8 to 10 ears of corn, and which is about 4 to 5 times as much. And it also grows in about 3 months instead of 6 months. You can have 2 growing seasons. So ultimately, you end up producing about 20 to 30 times more corn. Now, the cobs of corn in Mexico are 4 to 6 inches. They're little. The ones in Iowa are 10 to 12 inches. So they're like twice as long, and they're fatter. And they can adjust the flavors. They can make popping corn for popcorn. They can make sweet corn. They can make corn for ethanol to make fuel for engines. Those are all variations in the type of corn that are made in the lab. Now, that's a big difference. If you're growing 30 times, or even 60 times because of the growing season, that's going to feed 60 times more people. And keep in consideration that our world is overpopulated. We have 7.5 billion people, and the planet's made to sustain 1 billion people. So we need these types of things to be able to feed people. Now, what does it do to your body, GMO? Well, there's never been any research that shows that it does anything to your body. So what they do with this GMO is, let's say you could notice this in your garden. If you ever have an orange tree, you'll see some that are bigger, some that are smaller. You know, they'll get the seeds from the ones that are bigger maybe. In this case, the corn. They'll get the plants that are growing the larger corn and they'll say, hey, that one's growing bigger than all the other ones. Or the plant is taller. And they'll take that one, they'll specifically start breeding that corn to get its favorable attributes. It's kind of like getting a human that's 6'5" and then breeding with another human that's tall. You're probably going to get offspring that are tall. Whereas if you get a human that's 6'5", breed them with a human that's 5 foot, you're probably going to get someone that's smaller. So it's kind of the same thing, you're just passing along the genes. But what they do with the food is they look for favorable attributes like resistance to insects, shorter growing season, size, taste, stuff like that, texture, and they'll select out those and they'll combine them with other types of corn that have other favorable attributes. That helps make an ideal piece of corn, or tomato, or whatever other type of food they're breeding. Now, it doesn't really sound that bad. The only thing is that 97% of those genes, we know exactly what happens. But there's a few percentage points, sometimes as little as 1%, we don't know what difference it makes in that plant. So we've been eating GMO corn forever. I eat it my whole life because you can't really avoid it. It's in everything. And there have never been shown any signs of it causing damage to humans. Now, I talk to a lot of friends that are like environmentalists, and I read all these studies, all this research they think it's terrible for the environment. But if you really think about it, if it's producing 60 times more food than the food that's not GMO, how can that be bad? Because otherwise we would have to cut down 60 acres of forest to grow the same amount of corn that we would with 1 acre of corn that's GMO corn. So if you look at it that way, it's actually really good for the environment to eat GMO products. Now, I'm not pushing them, but I don't pay a lot of attention to whether or not it is or it isn't when I go to the store, because there's never been shown anything showing that it does damage to humans. And I also am very environmentally conscious myself. And I don't want to hear about additional rainforest or other types of forests being cut down to grow food when we could just use an environmentally friendly alternative like GMO. And the second thing I look at is nobody wants to be hungry. I don't like being hungry. I don't like hearing about people in other countries being hungry. So without GMO foods, we would not be able to feed all these folks, or even ourselves. There just isn't enough land in the world to feed all the people we have. So when I go to the store, I eat GMO. I don't feel any problems with it. There's been a lot of folks that have made a big deal about it because they think it's like Frankenfood. And I understand the fear, and there's always a fear of the unknown. But scientifically speaking, there's never been a study that shows that. And if you think about it, humans have been genetically modifying foods since the beginning of history. As I mentioned with corn and a lot of other foods, humans have been doing it forever. If you think about dogs, all dogs came from wild dogs. Now we have Great Danes, we have Chihuahuas, we have Pit Bulls, we have British Bulldogs, on and on and on and on. Those are all genetic variations that have been isolated out and produced for their variable traits. Some people like the way Chihuahua looks. Some people like the way a Pit Bull looks, right? So it's the same thing with food. I don't see anything wrong with it. And I seriously don't think it's worth paying the extra money to buy food that's non-GMO. Thank you for listening. And from Morro Bay, California, this is Ernesto from AttaBoyCowBoy. Thank you. Bye-bye.